you're having a good day, and I wish to welcome you to this channel. If you're joining me for the first time today, you're very much welcome, and please consider subscribing to my channel. I post sewing tutorials and DIY videos every week. And to my returning subscribers, thank you so much for joining me again on a very interesting video. So today we'll learn how to make a trouser pattern. I have made a vertical and horizontal line on my pattern paper, and this is going to guide us to impute our dimensions. So these are the measurements we'll need for today's tutorial. We're going to straight away measure our hip line. This is our waistline. So you measure from your waist to your hip, and that's the measurement you're going to impute here. But because this pant is going to have a waistband on the waistline, we're going to take away 1.5 inches, which is the length of our waistband. So if you want a waistband of 2 inches, you're going to take that away from the waistline, and we're going to impute 8.5 inches. It's different for everyone, so I recommend you measure yourself or whoever you're sewing for so you get the actual measurements. Okay, so once you've done that, you're going to mark a straight line to connect that point. Next, we're going to measure our crotch length, and our crotch length is gotten by either you take away your out seam from your inseam, and whatever measurements you get, that's what you're going to apply here. Another way to get your crotch depth is to see it on a surface, as you can see on the screen, and the measurement you get from that surface will be your crotch depth. Or the simplest way is to divide your hip circumference by 4. So I'm marking my 11 inches on that point. Then connect with a straight line as well. The next point will be a thigh line, which is usually 2 inches below your crotch line. Just mark it on that point. Okay, and that's where you're going to impute the measurements around your thigh. Next, we'll measure our knee length. That's from your waist to your knee, and we have 22 inches, and we're going to mark that on that point. Then lastly, we'll measure our ankle line, or the full length of the trouser, and that is 40 inches for this project, so we're going to mark that there. Then finally, we're going to measure 2 inches for our hemming allowance. With this, we've captured all the vertical dimensions, and now we're going to impute the horizontal dimensions. So we don't get them mixed up and confused, we're going to write out what each of these lines stand for. So that's our hip line, and that's our crotch line, and that's the thigh line. This is our knee line, and this is our ankle line, and this is the hemming allowance. Next, we're going to impute our hip circumference divided by 4. I'm going to mark that here. That is 11 inches. We'll apply same measurements on our crotch line, on the thigh line, and on the waistline. We'll just mark a straight line to connect the dots. We're going to divide this measurement by 4 inches. Okay, so if you divide 11 by 4, you're going to get 2.75, and that's what we're going to apply on this point. Just apply that measurement on this point to extend our crotch. Okay, now on the waistline, we're going to impute our waist circumference measurement, divide by 4. So our waist circumference is 36 inches, And we're going to begin that from hip line we marked on the other side. And we're going to measure 36 inches divided by 4, that's 9 inches, and you're going to mark that on that point. Now if you want a dart for your pant, you're going to add 1 inch for your dart allowance. Okay, so that will bring it to 10 inches. But if you don't want a dart, just leave that out. Okay, now if you want a little ease for your pants, you go ahead and add 0.25 inches. This is optional. Okay, now from this point, from that dotted line there, you're going to link that straight to the hip line. Now next thing we're going to do, when you come to your waistline, okay, you want to reduce the waist a little bit, just by 0.5 inches. This is going to make your trouser to sit well on that waistline. Like, you know, your front bit is a bit shorter than the side. So now we're going to connect that straight to our actual waistline. We'll now create our crotch curve. Okay, and to create the crotch curve, you don't want it curving into your pants, so you want to measure 1.5 inches from the point you're going to measure from, and you're going to measure 1.5 inches outward. On that point as well, you're going to just go out by 0.25. okay, you don't want it curving into the pant, you want it just curving gradually onto the waistline. So now you're going to derive the grain line of your pant, or the middle line of your trousers. Okay, and to derive this, you just measure from your crotch extension all the way to the start of your crotch. And what I have here, whatever you get, you're going to divide that into 2. That means you're going to derive the midpoint of that. Okay, so you mark it on that point, then you're going to apply same dimension all through the pattern. That's from top to bottom. So whatever you have on that point, you're going to apply that on the hip line. You apply same on your waistline, then you apply same on your knee line, on your ankle line, and on the hemming allowance. So I'm going to measure my darts, and I'm going to measure 1/2 inch to the right and 1/2 inch to the left. You can use 4 inches for the front dart. Next, we're going to impute our thigh measurement. Okay, the measurement around the thigh is 26 inches. So we're going to divide that by 2, which is 13 inches, and that's what we're going to apply on the thigh. Okay, and to apply this 13 inches, we're going to make sure the middle of the 13 inches falls on our grain line. Okay, so you can just fold your tape into 2, and whatever you get, you place that on that middle line and use that to create out your thigh line. Now on the knee as well, you're going to impute your knee circumference divided by 2. So we have 16 inches as our knee circumference, so we'll divide that by 2, and what we have is 8 inches. And we're going to now impute our 8 inches on the knee. So we measure 4 to the right and 4 to the left of our grain line. We apply our ankle measurements, and our ankle circumference is 13 inches, and when you divide 13 by 2, you're going to get 6.5. So we want to impute 6.5 on the ankle line. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and link up our dots. Make sure to fine-tune all the edges, because you don't want anywhere looking sharp. Okay, so with this, we'll just create out our hemming allowance, and to do this, we'll just fold from our ankle line, then we're going to trace that into the bottom using our tracing wheel. This is because we don't want to fall short of fabric when we're folding our hem. Now the very final part to do here is to add 1/2 inch seam allowance all round. This is optional, okay? If you want, you just leave it like this. When you're drafting the back pattern, you're going to add all the allowance you need to make this pant on the front pattern. So it's optional to add it on the front piece or to move everything to the back piece and add it there. So whichever you prefer, you go with that, okay? So I'll just leave mine without the seam allowance. So you will need a seam allowance to sew on your waistband at the top. So we're going to just add that to this pant. So go ahead and cut our pattern. So I forgot to do the zipper fly before cutting out the front pattern, but it's fine. So I just had to stick some more piece of fabric on that end just to help me extend and create my zipper fly. So before you cut out your front pattern, just include the zipper fly, okay? Don't be like me. The zipper fly is just 2 inches from this crotch line, okay? So just mark that and you're going to connect that to your crotch line. Measure 2 inches from the waistline. Then next we're going to go ahead and create our pocket, okay? And to create the pocket, you just need to measure from the waistline. You measure 2 inches inwards, that's towards your dart. Then you're going to measure 6 inches downwards, okay? And that will help you create the pocket. And when you've done that, you're going to now create your pocket bag. So from that 2 inch you marked inwards, you're going to now create from your dart line. Then you determine the length of your pocket. So it could be from the crotch line, or you could extend that all the way to your thigh line, okay? So whichever you choose to work with is fine. So just make sure your palm fits nicely in your pocket before you trace that out. You're going to trace that into your tracing paper. Then we'll need 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then cut this out now. Then we'll also cut our pocket. So now we'll go ahead and draft the back. To start with, we need to transfer our front pattern onto another plain pattern paper to help us create the back pattern. We want a crotch extension on that point, and we're going to add an extra 2 inches. This will help us create our back crotch because the back crotch is meant to be longer than the front one. Okay, so from that point we're going to measure 1/2 inch downwards, because we want to bring down our crotch so that our bum will sit nicely. Then what we're going to do next is we're going to derive the midpoint of this line. That's from this crotch line to our grain line. So we're going to derive the midpoint and we're going to mark that. So from that point we marked, we'll measure whatever we have at this point. We're going to lift it and place it at the top here to create our butt rise. Okay, so I have 2.75, and that's what I'm going to mark at that point. Because you don't want your crotch cutting into your pattern, you're going to measure 2 inches from this point outwards, and this will help you to connect your crotch to the butt rise. Next, we're going to create the waistline for our back pattern. So we're going to measure whatever we have on our front waistline. We're going to lift that and place that from that point to create a new waistline for the back. So mark that here, then connect that with. So once that's done, we'll come to our crotch line and we're going to measure 1 inch outwards. This 1 inch is going to serve as our part of our seam allowance. If you remember, we did not add any seam allowance at the front. Okay, so this one now is going to serve as the seam allowance for the whole project, which implies that we need 2 inches seam allowance to sew these trousers. That means 1/2 inch on all 4 sides. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So this 1 inch now is going to serve us as the seam allowance for this side of the pattern. Okay, so we'll just connect that from this line we marked on our hip line. We're going to also add another 1 inch, which will also serve as our seam allowance on the side. Okay, so I'm marking that 1 inch there. So this has extended our waistline a bit further. Okay, let me just explain again. Collected our actual waistline, which was 10.5. okay, and we moved that from this point down to the waistline to create our back waistline, and that's where it stops. Okay, now from that point we have added an extra 1 inch, which will serve as our seam allowance, and that is what brings us to that point. Now we'll connect that point to the 1 inch we added on the crotch line. Next up, you're going to add 1 inch on the knee line as well. Then you add 1 inch on your ankle line, as well as the hemming allowance. Right, so you've created one part of your seam allowance. You also need seam allowance on the other side as well. So we're going to also go ahead and add 1 inch on that point too. Add 1 inch on the ankle line and 1 inch on our hemming allowance. If you want a little ease for your trousers, just go ahead and add extra 0.25 on each of those dots. This is optional. So now on our hip line as well, we're going to add 1 inch, then add 1 inch to the waistline and 1 inch to your butt rise. Then you're going to also add 1/2 inch seam allowance at the waistline, because you know that we added 1/2 inch to the front waistline to help us add our waistband. Don't forget that when you're transferring your front pattern into this back pattern, you're going to transfer the waistline from the original waistline we marked, not the 1/2 inch we brought down. Okay, transfer it from the original waistline, so that by the time you're adding your 1/2 inch seam allowance for the waistband, it will still align with your actual waistline on that point. So now we're going to go ahead and link up all our dots. Now we'll go ahead and cut our back pattern. If you want want a little bit of ease, you just add your 1/2 inch ease allowance all round. This depends on how free you want your trousers to be on you. But if you don't want any ease allowance at all, you want it to fit nicely, this is the pattern you're going to work with. Please give me a thumbs up. This encourages me to make more beautiful videos like this. So next we're going to create our dart for the back pattern. So from this front waistline, we're going to measure the distance we have for our dart. So that same distance we have from our crotch line to the dart, we're going to apply that on our back waistline. Not from the 1 inch seam allowance we added, but from the actual waistline. Okay, so from this actual crotch line, we're going to now mark same dimension. So apply same. Then we'll connect with a straight line. Now we'll create our dart by measuring 1/2 inch to the right and 1/2 inch to the left. Then the depth of the dart is going to be 5 inches. Then we connect our dots. So this is what our trouser pattern looks like, and this will be for our pockets. Just note that to make a waistband, you don't need to make it straight. It has to be curved, just the same way we curved this waistline of this pattern so that it fits nicely. I already have a video on my channel on how to make a perfect waistband, and I'll link that in description. I recommend you watch that video so you know how to finish up your trousers. I hope you found something interesting and meaningful, helpful on today's video. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate your time. Please subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, and turn on the notification bell. I upload sewing tutorials and DIY videos on this channel every week. Give this video a thumbs up, share with your friends, and drop me a comment if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'll be more than happy to respond to all your questions. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.